Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Hey guys, I hope you are doing well. So today we are discussing Introduction to ER Model. So the ER relationship model is a conceptual model for designing a database. This model represents the logical structure of the database, including entities, their attributes, and relationship between them. So what is entity? An object that is stored as a data is known as entity. There are two types of entity, strong and weak. We are discussing later on. So, next is attribute, the properties that describe an entity. For example, student. A student ID can be an attribute, okay, that describe an entity. The third one is relationship. Relationship means a connection between entities. Means student can enroll in the courses, so they are in the relationships. Okay, so there are the major symbols you have to learn, or you can remember it so that you can make the design. Okay, so use ER diagrams according to this table. So rectangle means the entity, ellipse means attribute, diamond means a relationship among entities, the line we have drawn means attribute to entities and between entities set. Double ellipse means it is a multi-valued attribute. Double rectangle means it is a weak entity. So you can remember these symbols to represent the entities. Okay, and going further, we have entity. An entity represents a real world object, concept, or a thing about which a data is stored in a database. It acts as a building block for databases. Tables in relationship represent these entities. Example, like we have real world example like person, car, product, anything, we represent entity. Okay, so what is entity set? An entity refer to the individual object, right? So the collection of the entities in the particular type is known as entity set. For example, entity 1 that belongs to the entity type student, and the group of all the students form that entity set. Okay, so we represent the entity set in the ER diagram, but we can't represent individual entities because an entity is like a row in the table, and the ER diagram shows the structure and relationships. So there are the types of entities we have to discuss. So first type is strong and the second is weak. So strong entity is a type of the entity that has a key attribute that can uniquely identify each instance of an entity. Means the primary key, we have the primary key, right? So primary can uniquely identify each attribute. But in the case of weak, we cannot be uniquely identified by its own attribute alone. It depends on the strong entity to be identified. Okay, a weak entity is associated with an identified entity. It means it is a partial key. Okay, it is independent, does not depend on the another entity for identification. It always depend on the strong entity. For example, there is department and there is room in the building. So how it is? Room can be identified by the building. Okay, so this is a building, there are the rooms. So rooms can be identified when the building is there. Okay, when there is no building, no room. Okay, talking about the attributes in ER model. So what are attributes? They are the properties that define the entity type. For example, for a student, entity may be a roll number, name, DOB, age, address, whatever. Okay, so what defines the entity is known as attribute. So there are the four types of attribute: key attribute, composite attribute, multi-valued attribute, and derived attribute. So what is key attribute? The attribute which uniquely identifies each entity in the entity set is known as key attribute. For example, roll number. Roll number will be unique for each student. Okay, so it is the key attribute. So next is composite attribute. An attribute composed of many other attributes is called composite attribute. For example, here, address attribute of the student entity type consists of a street, city, state, and country. In ER diagram, composite attribute is represented by the oval comprises of the ovals. Okay. So next one is multi-valued attribute. Multi-valued attributes consist of more than a one value for a given entity. For example, phone number. Okay. It can be more than one for a given student. Okay. For example, I have two phone numbers. It can be three. Okay. In ER diagram, multi-valued attribute is represented by the double oval. So that's why I have drawn here double oval. Okay. So the fourth one is derived. An attribute that can be derived from the other attribute of the entity type is known as derived attribute. For example, age. Because age can be derived from DOB, right? When we know the DOB of the person, we can calculate the age easily. So in ER diagram, the derived attribute is represented by the dashed oval. So like this, dashed oval, not like full oval, So the complete entity type student with the attribute can be represented as this whole diagram. Student is the entity. There are the key attribute which uniquely identify student. Name, DOB, phone number. The phone numbers can be multi-valued, so I have drawn the double oval. So there the age can be derived from the DOB. So student have the age. Then student have an address. Then address further have the properties like country, which country, state, and the city, like this. So here is all about the attribute. Thank you guys. Hope you have understood well. So stay tuned for the next video.